I sat quietly at the corner table of Romano's Italian bistro, watching my sister Lauren deliver her verdict to the entire restaurant. At 32 and still single, she announced loudly, gesturing dramatically with her wine glass. You'll die alone with no family, Zachary. It's honestly pathetic. Everyone around our table nodded sadly in agreement. Dad shook his head and added, such a waste of potential. Aunt Margaret clicked her tongue disapprovingly while Uncle Frank just stared at his pasta. Mom looked embarrassed but said nothing. I simply smiled and checked my watch. 2:15 exactly. The restaurant doors opened, and my heart raced with anticipation. The woman who walked through those doors commanded attention without trying. Dr. Sarah Martinez moved with the confident grace of someone who saved lives for a living, her dark hair pulled back in an elegant ponytail, wearing a navy blazer that spoke of both professionalism and warmth. Behind her, two energetic 5-year-old children bounded forward, their faces lighting up the moment they spotted me. Daddy Zachary, Emma called out, her pigtails bouncing as she ran toward our table. Jacob followed close behind, clutching a small toy dinosaur and grinning widely. The conversations at our table died instantly. Lauren's wineglass froze halfway to her lips. Dad's fork clattered against his plate. Mom's hand flew to her chest in shock. Sarah approached our table with complete composure. As if she belonged there all along, she leaned down and kissed my cheek gently, then turned to face my stunned family. Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Sarah Martinez Thompson, Zachary's wife and chief cardiothoracic surgeon at Boston General Hospital. The silence that followed could have stopped traffic. Lauren's jaw had quite literally dropped open, revealing a mouthful of half-chewed breadstick. Dad blinked rapidly, as if trying to clear his vision. Mom made a small choking sound. Wife, Lauren finally managed to croak out. Emma climbed onto my lap without hesitation, wrapping her small arms around my neck. We missed you, Daddy, she whispered against my ear. Jacob stood beside my chair, showing me his dinosaur. Look, it's a triceratops. Sarah taught us about herbivores and carnivores on the way here. Behind them, our nanny Maria appeared, carrying 6-month-old Andrew in his infant carrier. The baby's face broke into a toothless grin the moment he saw me, reaching his chubby arms in my direction with obvious recognition and joy. 6 years, Sarah said calmly, settling into the empty chair beside me that the server quickly provided. We've been married 6 years this November. Emma and Jacob are from my previous relationship, and Zachary adopted them when they were barely walking. Andrew is our biological son. I watched my family process this information like a computer, trying to run too many programs at once. Lauren looked like she'd been struck by lightning. Dad kept opening and closing his mouth without producing sound. Aunt Margaret clutched Uncle Frank's arm so tightly I worried about his circulation. But we never, Mom stammered, her face cycling through confusion, hurt, and disbelief. We never told you because of exactly what just happened, I said quietly, bouncing Emma gently on my knee. This family has spent the last decade criticizing every choice I've made. My art degree was impractical. My freelance graphic design career was unstable. My apartment downtown was too expensive. My lifestyle was unconventional. I got tired of defending my happiness to people who seemed determined to find fault with it. Sarah signaled the server, who immediately brought a high chair for Andrew. Could we get 2 children's menus, please? She asked politely. And perhaps some crayons if you have them. The normalcy of her request seemed to jar everyone back to reality. Lauren found her voice first, though it came out shrill and accusatory. This is ridiculous, Zachary. You can't just show up with some random woman and kids and expect us to believe this fairy tale. Random woman. Sarah's eyebrow arched slightly, but her tone remained level. I graduated summa cum laude from Harvard Medical School, completed my residency at Johns Hopkins, and currently perform an average of 4 cardiac surgeries per week. I also helped design the new children's wing at Boston General, which is where I met your brother. He volunteered his services pro bono to create artwork that would help young patients feel less afraid during treatment. She pulled out her phone and showed them pictures. Images of colorful murals depicting friendly animals and peaceful landscapes adorning hospital walls. Zachary spent 6 months working on that project, refusing any payment because he said healing children was more important than profit. Dad leaned forward, studying the photos with newfound interest. You did this, I nodded, helping Jacob color on his placemat. It led to contracts with 3 other medical facilities. Turns out there's a real need for artwork that helps people heal. I've been specializing in healthcare environments for the past 4 years. 4 years. Mom's voice was small, wounded. You've been building a career, a family, a whole life, and we knew nothing about it. What was I supposed to tell you? I asked, the old pain surfacing, despite my best efforts to stay calm. Every time I shared good news, someone found a way to diminish it. When I got my first big freelance contract, Lauren said I was playing with crayons for a living. When I moved to my current apartment, Dad called it throwing money away on rent. When I talked about wanting children someday, Uncle Frank said I was too irresponsible to raise a goldfish. The accuracy of these memories hit them visibly. Dad's face flushed red. Lauren shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Uncle Frank suddenly found his salad fascinating. Sarah placed her hand over mine. I encouraged Zachary to keep our relationship private initially because I could see how much your criticism hurt him. He would come home from family gatherings, emotionally drained, questioning his worth as a person. That's not what families should do to each other. But hiding it for 6 years. Lauren's voice rose again, drawing stares from nearby tables. That's just manipulative and cruel. What's cruel? I said firmly. Is spending 32 years making someone feel like everything they do is wrong. What's manipulative is using family guilt to control someone's life choices. Andrew started fussing in his high chair, and Sarah smoothly lifted him out, settling him on her lap where he immediately calmed down. The baby's contentment with her was obvious, natural, beautiful. This wasn't some elaborate deception. This was a family. I still can't believe this, Lauren muttered, shaking her head. This whole thing is insane. What's insane? Sarah said quietly. Is that a man as talented and caring as your brother felt he had to choose between his family of origin and his chosen family? What's insane is that you're all so focused on what you think his life should look like that you never bothered to ask what would actually make him happy. Emma tugged on my sleeve. Daddy, why does everyone look sad? Are they okay? I kissed the top of her head, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo. They're just surprised, sweetheart. Sometimes grown-ups need time to understand new things, like when Jacob didn't understand fractions until you drew those pizza pictures. Exactly like that. Lauren stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. This changes nothing, she declared, though her voice lacked its earlier conviction. You still should have told us. Family doesn't keep secrets like this. Family, Sarah said calmly, should be a safe place to share joy, not a battlefield where every piece of happiness gets torn apart. Lauren's face darkened at Sarah's words, her defensive walls rising higher. You don't understand our family dynamic, she snapped. You're an outsider looking in, making judgments about relationships you know nothing about. Sarah adjusted Andrew on her lap, the baby contentedly playing with her stethoscope necklace. Actually, Lauren, I understand more than you might think. I know about your divorce from Marcus 18 months ago. I know about the gambling addiction that destroyed your marriage. I know about the bankruptcy filing last December and the fact that you've been living in your parents' basement for the past 8 months. The color drained from Lauren's face like water from a punctured balloon. Dad's fork clattered to his plate. Mom gasped audibly. Uncle Frank and Aunt Margaret exchanged startled glances. How did you? Lauren's voice came out as barely a whisper. Because I make it my business to understand what my husband is dealing with, Sarah replied matter-of-factly. I'm a surgeon, Lauren. I research everything thoroughly before making important decisions. When Zachary would come home upset after family gatherings, describing someone who seemed intent on making him feel worthless, I wanted to understand why. Sarah's tone remained conversational, almost gentle, but her words cut with surgical precision. I know about the 3 failed business ventures, Uncle Frank, and the $60,000 debt you've been hiding from Aunt Margaret. I know about the DUI you got last summer, and the community service you're still completing. Uncle Frank's face went ashen. Aunt Margaret stared at him in shock. Frank? What is she talking about? I know about the loan you took from the church building fund, Dad. Sarah continued, her attention turning to my father. $25,000 that you've been slowly paying back without telling Mom. Money that Lauren convinced you to borrow to help with her gambling debts? The table fell into stunned silence. Even the ambient restaurant noise seemed muted. Emma and Jacob, sensing the tension, moved closer to me, their innocent faces reflecting confusion about why all the adults looked so upset. I don't understand why you know these things, Mom said faintly, her hands trembling slightly as she reached for her water glass. Because, Sarah said, her voice taking on a protective edge, for 6 years, I've watched the man I love torture himself over whether he was somehow failing his family. I've held him while he questioned his own worth because the people who should lift him up consistently tore him down instead. I've seen him volunteer countless hours for children's charities, create beautiful art that brings joy to sick kids, build a successful business helping people heal, and still wonder if he was somehow not enough because his family made him feel that way. She shifted Andrew to her other arm, her medical training evident in how naturally she multitasked. So yes, I researched. I wanted to understand whether this was normal family concern or something more destructive. What I found was a pattern of manipulation, financial irresponsibility, and emotional abuse disguised as family loyalty. Lauren's hands shook as she gripped the edge of the table. You had no right to investigate our private business. You had no right to systematically destroy your brother's self-esteem, Sarah countered. But here we are. The weight of revealed secrets settled over the table like a heavy blanket. Dad couldn't meet Mom's eyes. Uncle Frank stared at his hands. Lauren looked like she wanted to disappear entirely. Why didn't you tell me about the church money? Mom asked Dad, her voice barely audible. Lauren said she would pay it back quickly. Dad mumbled. She said it was just temporary, until she got back on her feet after the divorce. Instead, she lost another $15,000 playing online poker, Sarah said. The money's gone, William. It has been for months. Emma tugged on my sleeve again. Daddy, can we get ice cream after lunch? I want chocolate chip. Her innocent request provided a momentary break in the tension. I smoothed her hair, grateful for the reminder that life contained sweetness alongside pain. Well, see, Princess? Let's finish lunch first. I want vanilla, Jacob added, not to be outdone by his sister's request. Sarah makes the best vanilla milkshakes. I told them, earning a small smile from my wife. She puts real vanilla beans in them. That sounds yummy. Emma clapped her hands together. The children's enthusiasm felt like sunshine breaking through storm clouds. Even in this charged atmosphere, they brought lightness and hope. I realized this was exactly why Id wanted to protect our family bubble, to preserve this innocence and joy. Lauren sank back into her chair, her earlier bravado completely deflated. I was trying to help the family understand that you were making poor choices, she said weakly. No, Sarah said firmly, but not unkindly. You were trying to control the narrative to justify your own poor choices. It's easier to point out someone else's supposed failures than to face your own actual ones. That's not true, Lauren protested, but her voice lacked conviction. Then explain why every family gathering for the past 3 years has included some comment about Zachary's lifestyle, his career, his living situation, or his relationship status. Explain why you consistently frame his independence as irresponsibility and his success as luck. Lauren opened her mouth to respond, then closed it again. The truth hung in the air between us, impossible to deny. I've been protecting Zachary from this toxicity, Sarah continued, because healthy people don't need to constantly defend their happiness to people who claim to love them. Families should celebrate each other's successes, not undermine them. Andrew started babbling happily, reaching for the colorful children's menu. The sound of his innocent chatter provided a stark contrast to the heavy adult conversation surrounding him. We love Zachary, Mom said defensively, though her voice wavered. I'm sure you do, Sarah replied. But love without respect isn't actually love. It's control. And control disguised as concern is still control. She looked around the table, meeting each person's eyes directly. I hope we can change that pattern, because these children deserve to know their grandparents, their aunt, and their extended family. But it has to be on terms that honor Zachary's worth as a person, not terms that require him to constantly prove himself worthy of basic respect. Lauren pushed back from the table, her face flushed with humiliation and anger. I need some air, she muttered, heading toward the restaurant's front entrance. As she walked away, I felt a complex mixture of satisfaction and sadness. The truth was finally out, but the cost felt enormous. This is a lot to process, Dad said quietly, his voice heavy with shame and confusion. Yes, it is, Sarah agreed. But truth usually is. Mom reached across the table, her fingers brushing mine tentatively. Zachary, could we speak privately for a moment? There's something your father and I need to tell you. Sarah immediately understood, gathering Emma and Jacob toward the restaurant's small arcade area. Come on, you two. Let's see if they have any fun games while Daddy talks with Grandma and Grandpa. Can we play the claw machine? Emma asked excitedly. Well, explore all the options, Sarah promised, settling Andrew in his stroller. Take your time, she told me quietly, squeezing my shoulder. Once they were out of earshot, Dad cleared his throat nervously. Son, today wasn't just about your mother's birthday celebration. The formal tone in his voice immediately put me on alert. Uncle Frank and Aunt Margaret exchanged uncomfortable glances, suddenly very interested in their dessert menus. What do you mean? I asked, though something in my gut already suspected this conversation would change everything. Dad pulled a manila envelope from his briefcase, his hands shaking slightly as he placed it on the table. I've been planning to announce the sale of Thompson Construction Company. After 43 years, I'm ready to retire. Thompson Construction. The business Dad had built from nothing, starting with a pickup truck and a toolbox when I was 5 years old. The company that had paid for our family home, our cars, our educations, the legacy head poured his life into creating. The sale price is $4.2 million, he continued, his voice barely above a whisper. After taxes and business debts, that leaves approximately $3 million to divide between you and Lauren. I stared at the envelope, my brain struggling to process the magnitude of what he was saying. $3 million. Life-changing money. Generational wealth. But there's something else, Mom added, her voice thick with emotion. She pulled out a second set of papers. These clearly prepared by a lawyer. Lauren has been. She's been working on us for months about the inheritance. My stomach dropped. Working on you how? Dad couldn't meet my eyes. She convinced us that you were too unstable for business responsibility. Said your artistic career proved you couldn't handle serious financial matters. She had charts, Zachary. Actual charts showing your income fluctuations, your living expenses, your lifestyle choices. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. Lifestyle choices. She said you were probably gay and hiding it, which was why you never brought anyone home. Mom whispered, tears starting to form. She said giving you access to that much money would be irresponsible because you'd waste it on frivolous things. She prepared all the paperwork to make her the sole heir. Dad continued miserably, made it seem like she was protecting the family legacy, protecting us from making a terrible mistake. I looked at the legal documents in front of me, seeing Lauren's name typed neatly as primary beneficiary and executor of estate. My name appeared nowhere on the pages. We signed them last week, Dad admitted, his voice breaking. She said it was just preliminary paperwork, that we could always change things later. But now, seeing you with Sarah and the children, understanding what we've missed, what we've been blind to, she threatened us, Mom said suddenly, the words spilling out like water through a broken dam. She said if we didn't cut you out of the inheritance, she would move away with her children from her first marriage and we'd never see them again. My head spun with the implications. Lauren's ex-husband, Marcus, had 2 kids from his previous relationship, 7-year-old Tyler and 9-year-old Madison. They weren't biologically related to our family, but Mom and Dad had treated them like grandchildren during Lauren's marriage. When the divorce happened, Lauren had used their affection for those kids as leverage. She played on our fear of losing the only grandchildren we thought we'd ever have, Dad explained. We were so worried about you being alone, about never having a family to carry on our name, that we couldn't see past Lauren's manipulation. Jesus, I breathed, the full scope of her scheming becoming clear. And now, finding out about your beautiful family, your successful career, your whole life that we've been shut out of. Mom broke down completely. We've been such fools. Uncle Frank spoke up for the first time since the revelations began. Lauren approached me too, about 6 months ago. Said she was worried about your mental health. Asked if I'd noticed any concerning behaviors at family gatherings. I told her you seemed quiet but fine. She said that was exactly the problem. That you were withdrawing and showing signs of depression. She was building a case. I realized aloud, creating a narrative where I was unstable and she was the responsible one, looking out for everyone's best interests. She showed us articles about gambling addiction in families. Aunt Margaret added reluctantly. Said it could be genetic, said your risk-taking with your freelance career was a warning sign. Made it sound like giving you access to money would be enabling destructive behavior. The irony was breathtaking. Lauren, who had destroyed her own marriage through gambling, had convinced my parents that I was the risky one. Shed projected her own problems onto me while positioning herself as the family's responsible protector. "Where is she now?" I asked, looking toward the front of the restaurant. "Probably calling her lawyer," Dad said grimly. "She's been preparing for this conversation for months. Had contingency plans for different scenarios." At that moment, Sarah returned with the children, immediately sensing the shift in atmosphere. Emma ran to me, climbing back onto my lap. "Daddy, you look sad. Are you okay?" I hugged her tightly, breathing in her innocence. "I'm okay, sweetheart. Just having a grown-up conversation with Grandma and Grandpa." "Are they really our grandparents?" Jacob asked, studying Mom and Dad with curious 5-year-old directness. Before I could answer, Dad leaned forward. "We'd like to be, if that's okay with you." Sarah sat beside me, reading the situation instantly. "What's happened?" I quickly explained about the business sale and Lauren's inheritance manipulation. Sarah listened without interruption, her medical training evident in how she processed complex information quickly and thoroughly. "So she's been systematically isolating Zachary from family decisions while positioning herself as the reasonable choice," Sarah summarized. "Classic manipulation strategy." "We feel terrible," Mom said. "We should have questioned her claims. Should have talked to Zachary directly instead of listening to secondhand reports about his life." "The paperwork can be changed," Dad said firmly. "I'm calling the lawyer tomorrow morning to revise everything. Equal split between both children. The way it should have been from the beginning." Sarah's phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced at it, her expression shifting to concern. "Zachary, Lauren just sent me a message. She wants to meet privately." "That's not happening," I said immediately. "Actually," Sarah said thoughtfully, "it might be exactly what needs to happen. Sometimes confronting manipulation directly is the only way to stop it." Before anyone could respond, Lauren appeared at our table, her face flushed and her breathing rapid. Shed clearly been making phone calls outside. "We need to talk," she announced, but her earlier commanding tone had been replaced by something that sounded almost desperate. "I think we've said enough for one day," I replied calmly. "No, you don't understand." Lauren's eyes darted around the table frantically. "This changes everything. The inheritance, the business, all of it. I have information that could affect Dad's medical clearance for the sale." Sarah's posture straightened imperceptibly. "What kind of information?" Lauren's smile was sharp, predatory. "The kind that proves this family needs someone responsible in charge of important decisions." She pulled out her phone, her thumb hovering over the screen with obvious threat. Whatever was coming next, I realized, would be her final desperate gambit to maintain control. The children sensed the tension, moving closer to Sarah and me instinctively. Emma whispered, "Why is everyone being scary?" I kissed her forehead, wishing I could protect her from the ugliness about to unfold. But sometimes, I was learning, the only way through darkness is straight ahead, no matter how much it hurts. Lauren's thumb moved across her phone screen with practiced precision, pulling up what appeared to be a recording app. "I've been documenting family conversations for the past 6 months," she announced, her voice carrying a mixture of triumph and desperation. "Every phone call, every family dinner, every private conversation about Dad's health and business decisions." The blood drained from Dad's face. Mom grabbed his arm instinctively, as if steadying herself against an earthquake. Uncle Frank leaned back in his chair like he'd been physically pushed. "Recording us," Mom whispered. "Without our knowledge, insurance," Lauren said, her tone becoming more confident as she sensed their shock. "I have hours of evidence showing Dad's confusion about financial matters, Mom's concerns about his memory, discussions about his medication side effects. Enough to demonstrate that any recent changes to inheritance documents were made under questionable circumstances." Sarah's medical training kicked in immediately. "Are you suggesting your father is mentally incapacitated?" "I'm suggesting that a 71-year-old man with recent cardiac issues and medication adjustments might not be making the clearest financial decisions," Lauren replied smoothly, "especially when he's being influenced by family members who've been hiding major life developments for years." My stomach clenched as I understood the full scope of her threat. She wasn't just trying to maintain control of the inheritance. She was prepared to have Dad declared mentally incompetent if necessary. "You're talking about elder abuse claims," Sarah said quietly, her voice carrying the authority of someone familiar with medical ethics and legal procedures. "I'm talking about protecting vulnerable family members from manipulation," Lauren shot back. Look at today's situation. Zachary shows up with a surprise family, conveniently right when inheritance discussions are happening. That's not coincidence. That's calculated timing. We've been married 6 years, I said, keeping my voice level despite the rage building inside me. So you claim. But can you prove you didn't accelerate this reveal once you learned about the business sale? Can you prove your wife didn't research our family specifically to target Dad's wealth? Sarah's laugh was sharp and entirely without humor. You think I need your family's money? I'm a cardiac surgeon, Lauren. I make more in a month than most people see in a year. Money that could disappear with one malpractice lawsuit, Lauren countered. Money that depends on your ability to maintain surgical precision as you age. Money that's vulnerable to healthcare industry changes. But inheritance money? That's permanent security. Emma tugged on my shirt, confused by the angry voices. Daddy, why is everyone fighting? Before I could answer, Sarah spoke directly to Lauren. Let me explain something about Massachusetts wiretapping laws. Recording private conversations without all parties' consent is a felony punishable by up to 5 years in prison and substantial fines. Lauren's confidence faltered slightly. Family conversations aren't subject to the same restrictions. Actually, they are, especially when those recordings are intended for legal proceedings or manipulation purposes. Sarah's tone was calm, clinical, devastating. I know this because I deal with medical ethics and legal documentation daily. Patient confidentiality laws require understanding of consent and recording regulations. She leaned forward slightly. But more importantly, Lauren, I know about your research into elder abuse claims because you've been Googling the topic from your parents' computer. You've visited 17 different websites about contesting wills, challenging mental competency, and claiming financial abuse by family members. Lauren's face went white. How could you possibly know that? Because I asked your parents to install basic security software on their home computer after I noticed their financial information had been accessed without authorization. The software logs internet activity to protect against identity theft. The implications hit everyone simultaneously. Lauren hadn't just been planning this confrontation. She'd been researching legal strategies while living in her parents' home, using their resources to build a case against them if necessary. You've been planning to have us declared incompetent? Dad said slowly, the realization settling over him like a heavy blanket. Only if you made irresponsible decisions, Lauren said defensively, but her voice lacked conviction. Irresponsible like what? Mom asked, her voice rising. Like acknowledging our son's accomplishments? Like meeting our grandchildren? Like correcting a mistake we made based on your lies? You don't understand the full picture, Lauren insisted. Zachary's career isn't as stable as he's claiming. Freelance design work is unpredictable. He could lose everything if the medical industry changes or if his major clients drop him. Unlike gambling, Sarah said dryly, which is completely reliable and never results in financial ruin. Lauren flinched, as if she'd been slapped. My situation is different. I had a temporary problem that I'm addressing. Your situation, Sarah continued relentlessly, involves losing your house, your children's college funds, your marriage, and your parents' retirement security to online poker. Your situation involves manipulating elderly parents into changing their wills while secretly researching how to have them declared mentally incompetent if they don't comply with your demands. That's not what I was doing, Lauren protested weakly. Then explain the browser history showing searches for elderly parent mental decline, signs of dementia in 70s, and when to contest a will for incapacity. Uncle Frank spoke up, his voice heavy with disgust. Lauren, how could you even consider doing something like that to your own parents? I wasn't going to actually do it, Lauren said desperately. It was just research, just backup options in case. In case they chose to treat their son with respect and dignity, Sarah finished. In case they decided to acknowledge his success and include him in family financial planning. Andrew started fussing in his stroller, picking up on the tension around him. Sarah lifted him smoothly, his presence a reminder of innocence in the midst of ugly family politics. I think, Dad said quietly, his voice carrying new strength. We need to have a very different conversation about family, trust, and manipulation. Lauren looked around the table, seeing her support system crumbling in real time. Her recordings, her legal research, her carefully constructed narrative, all of it exposed and rendered powerless by the truth. I was trying to protect this family, she said one final time, but the words sounded hollow even to her own ears. No, I said firmly, finally finding my voice. You are trying to control this family. There's a difference. The restaurant noise continued around us. Other families enjoying normal conversations about normal things. But at our table, 6 months of manipulation and lies were finally being laid bare, forcing all of us to confront uncomfortable truths about power, control, and what family really means. Lauren's phone sat silent on the table, her recordings suddenly meaningless in the face of exposed reality. The question now was whether any of us could find a way forward from this point, or if the damage was too deep to repair. Dad's hand went to his chest suddenly, his face draining of color. The familiar gesture sent alarm bells ringing in my memory. I'd seen it before at family gatherings, always during moments of high stress or conflict. William. Mom's voice was sharp with immediate concern. Sarah was on her feet instantly, medical training overriding everything else. She handed Andrew to me and moved to Dad's side, her fingers finding his wrist to check his pulse. How are you feeling? Any chest pain? Shortness of breath. Just tight. Dad managed, his breathing becoming labored, pressure across my chest. When did this start? Sarah asked, already shifting into full doctor mode. About a minute ago, Dad gasped. It's probably nothing. It's not nothing. Sarah's tone carried absolute authority. She looked directly at Mom. Patricia, I need you to know that I've been your husband's cardiologist for the past 18 months. The revelation hit the table like a thunderclap. Mom's face went white. Lauren stepped backward, nearly tripping over her chair. His cardiologist, Mom whispered. William came to Boston General after a cardiac episode at the construction site last year. He didn't want to worry the family, so he used my maiden name on all the paperwork. I've been monitoring his condition and adjusting his medications ever since. Sarah pulled out her phone, speed dialing while she continued checking Dad's vital signs. I'm calling an ambulance as a precaution, but first, I need everyone to understand something critical. Her attention turned to Lauren, and her voice became steel. Your emotional manipulation and stress tactics have been systematically endangering your father's recovery. Chronic family stress is one of the leading causes of cardiac episodes in patients with his condition. I didn't know he was sick, Lauren protested, but her voice lacked conviction. Yes, you did. Sarah's response was immediate and devastating. He told you about his chest pains 3 months ago when you were pressuring him about the inheritance. You told him it was probably just anxiety from worrying too much about problem children. Dad's eyes widened in shock, then anger. Lauren, you knew? You knew I was having cardiac issues and you still. I thought it was stress from worrying about Zachary, Lauren said weakly. I thought if we resolved the inheritance situation, you'd feel better. By creating more stress. Sarah's voice rose slightly, the first crack in her professional composure. By manipulating an elderly cardiac patient into making decisions based on lies and manufactured family drama, the paramedics arrived faster than I expected. Probably because Sarah had provided detailed medical information when she called. She immediately took charge, providing them with Dad's complete cardiac history, current medications, and probable triggers for this episode. Hess stable, she told them. But I want him monitored for the next few hours, given his recent stress levels and cardiac history. While the paramedics set up their equipment, Sarah turned back to our family. William's heart condition isn't severe, but it requires careful management. That means reducing stress, taking medications consistently, and avoiding emotional upheavals exactly like what happened here today. Is he going to be okay? Emma asked quietly, her small voice cutting through all the adult complexity. I lifted her onto my lap, grateful for her presence. Grandpa's going to be fine, sweetheart. Sarah is taking very good care of him. Dad, now connected to a portable EKG monitor, reached for my hand. Son, I owe you an enormous apology. We let fear and manipulation cloud our judgment about everything that actually matters. Dad, don't worry about that right now, I said, squeezing his fingers gently. No, I need to say this. His voice was stronger with the oxygen cannula helping his breathing. Lauren, what you did wasn't protecting this family. It was endangering it. Using my health condition as leverage for inheritance manipulation is unconscionable. Lauren sank into her chair, the full weight of her actions finally becoming clear. I didn't realize. I didn't think it through. You didn't think about anyone except yourself, Uncle Frank said harshly. You nearly gave your father a heart attack over money that isn't even yours yet. The paramedics conferred with Sarah, their conversation filled with medical terminology I didn't fully understand. After a few minutes, she returned to our table. Hez going to be fine, but I want to monitor him closely for the next 24 hours. The episode was stress-induced, not a structural cardiac problem, but we can't be too careful. She looked around the table, her medical authority giving her words additional weight. I need everyone to understand that emotional manipulation of elderly family members isn't just cruel. It can be genuinely life-threatening. William's cardiac condition makes him particularly vulnerable to stress-related episodes. Mom was crying quietly, overwhelmed by the cascade of revelations. I don't understand how we let this happen. How did we become so blind to what was really going on? Manipulation works by exploiting people's love and fear, Sarah explained gently. Lauren used your love for your grandchildren and your fear for Zachary's future to justify increasingly controlling behavior. Lauren finally spoke, her voice barely audible. I was scared. After the divorce, after losing everything to gambling, I felt like I had nothing left except family. I thought if I could just control one thing, if I could secure the inheritance, maybe I could start over. But you can't build a new life by destroying other people's current ones, I said firmly. You can't secure your future by manipulating your parents' present. Dad refused the hospital transport, insisting he felt much better with Sarah monitoring him. The restaurant manager had moved us to a private dining room where Dad could rest comfortably while we sorted through the emotional wreckage of the afternoon. I want to change my will tomorrow, Dad announced once he was settled. Equal inheritance between both children, with Sarah and Zachary as co-executors to prevent any future manipulation. Lauren looked like she'd been physically struck. Dad, I know I made mistakes, but completely cutting me out. I'm not cutting you out, Dad said firmly. I'm putting safeguards in place to protect everyone involved, including you. Money you can't gamble away, decisions you can't manipulate, family relationships that can't be held hostage. The children had been remarkably patient throughout this adult drama, but Emma was starting to fidget. Can we get ice cream now? She asked hopefully. All the fighting is making my tummy sad. Her innocent request broke some of the tension around the table. Despite everything that had happened, I realized we were still a family trying to figure out how to love each other better. Ice cream sounds perfect, Sarah agreed. After all this excitement, we could all use something sweet. As the server brought children's ice cream and adult coffee, I looked around the table at my complicated, damaged, but still redeemable family. Dad was alive and stable. The inheritance manipulation had been exposed and would be corrected. Lauren's behavior had been called out directly. But the real question remained. Could we build something healthy from this foundation of truth? Or were some wounds too deep to heal? In the privacy of the restaurant's back dining room, with Dad resting comfortably and the children happily eating their ice cream, Lauren finally broke down completely. The carefully constructed facade shed maintained for months crumbled like a dam giving way under too much pressure. I can't do this anymore, she whispered, her voice raw and broken. I can't pretend everything is fine when my whole life is falling apart. The tears came then, deep and wrenching sobs that seemed to pull up pain from places shed, kept locked away for months. Mom immediately moved to comfort her, maternal instincts overriding anger and confusion. Lauren, what's really going on? Mom asked gently, rubbing her daughter's back the way she had when Lauren was small. Marcus didn't leave me because he fell out of love, Lauren said through her tears. He left because I gambled away our children's college funds. $63,000 that was supposed to secure Tyler and Madison's futures. Gone to online poker in 3 months. The admission hung in the air like smoke from an explosion. Uncle Frank set down his coffee cup carefully. Aunt Margaret reached for her husband's hand. The house, the cars, our savings account, my retirement fund. I lost all of it, Lauren continued. Marcus tried to get me help. He arranged therapy sessions, support groups, financial counseling, but I kept lying to him, kept hiding how bad it had gotten. I convinced myself I could win it back if I just played smarter, bet bigger. Sarah leaned forward, her medical training helping her recognize the clinical signs of addiction and depression. How long has the gambling been a problem? 3 years, maybe longer. It started small. Online games with friends, fantasy football leagues, weekend trips to the casino. But after Mom got sick with pneumonia and Dad started having health scares, I felt so out of control. Gambling made me feel like I had power over something, like I could change outcomes if I was smart enough or lucky enough. Dad stirred in his chair, oxygen cannula still in place, but color returning to his face. Lauren, we had no idea you were struggling with anything like this. Because I got really good at lying, she said bitterly. I became an expert at covering tracks, hiding credit card statements, inventing excuses for why money was missing, and when the lying got harder, I started blaming other people for my problems. She looked directly at me for the first time since her breakdown began. I made you into the family scapegoat, Zachary, because it was easier than admitting I was the one making terrible choices. Every criticism about your career, your lifestyle, your independence, it was really me, projecting my own failures onto you. The honesty was devastating and necessary. I felt years of resentment and confusion finally finding context. Why didn't you just ask for help? Because asking for help meant admitting I destroyed my children's future. It meant telling Marcus that the responsible, organized woman he married had become someone who chose gambling over her own kids. It meant facing the fact that I'd become everything I claimed to hate about irresponsible people. Sarah's voice was gentle but direct. Lauren, addiction affects brain chemistry in ways that make rational decision-making extremely difficult. What you're describing isn't moral failure. It's illness that requires treatment. I know that intellectually, Lauren replied. I've read all the literature, attended some meetings, even had a few therapy sessions. But knowing and believing are different things, and it's hard to believe you deserve help when you've hurt so many people. Emma looked up from her ice cream, chocolate chips smudged on her chin. Are you sad because you need a hug? She asked Lauren with 5-year-old directness. The innocent question made Lauren cry harder. I'm sad because I've made very bad choices that hurt people I love. Maybe you can make better choices tomorrow, Emma suggested hopefully. Maybe I can, Lauren said, managing a small smile through her tears. Uncle Frank cleared his throat awkwardly. For what it's worth, Lauren, we all suspected something was wrong, but nobody knew how to address it. You seemed so angry all the time, so critical of everything and everyone. Anger was easier than sadness, Lauren admitted. It felt stronger than admitting I was scared and lost and completely out of control. Dad struggled to sit up straighter, his medical emergency having given him clarity about priorities. What kind of help do you need? Not money. We can't enable the gambling, but real help. Treatment, support, whatever it takes to get you healthy. I need to enter a residential treatment program, Lauren said quietly. I've been researching facilities for weeks but couldn't figure out how to pay for it or explain the time away. Most programs require 60 to 90 days, and good ones cost between $20,000 and $40,000. Sarah pulled out her phone, already researching. There are excellent programs in Massachusetts with sliding scale payments based on income. Some are covered by insurance, others have scholarship funds for people in financial crisis. You would help me find treatment even after everything I've done to your family? Lauren asked, incredulous. Helping you get healthy helps everyone, Sarah replied practically. Untreated addiction doesn't just go away. It gets worse and affects more people over time. If you're serious about recovery, then yes, we'll help you find appropriate resources. Mom was crying now too, overwhelmed by the complexity of loving someone whose illness had caused so much damage. Why didn't you tell us you were struggling? We could have helped sooner. Because this family doesn't talk about problems, Lauren said bluntly. We pretend everything is fine until it explodes into crisis. Look at today. Dad's been hiding a heart condition. Zachary's been hiding a wife and children. I've been hiding an addiction and financial collapse. We're all experts at keeping secrets to avoid difficult conversations. The truth of that observation settled over all of us uncomfortably. Despite claiming to be a close family, we'd all chosen isolation over vulnerability when facing our biggest challenges. That has to change, Dad said firmly. Starting now, no more secrets, no more manipulation, no more using love as a weapon to control each other's choices. Jacob, who had been quietly working on his ice cream, suddenly spoke up. Zachary says families are supposed to help each other feel better, not worse. Zachary is right, Dad said, reaching over to ruffle Jacob's hair. And I think we have a lot of learning to do about how to be the kind of family that actually helps each other. Lauren wiped her eyes with the restaurant napkin, mascara streaking down her cheeks. I want to get better. I want to be someone my kids can respect again, someone who contributes to this family instead of tearing it apart. but I don't know if I'm strong enough to do the work recovery requires. Strength isn't something you have or don't have, Sarah said. It's something you build through practice, support, and commitment to doing the next right thing, even when you don't feel like it. She showed Lauren her phone screen, displaying information about a highly rated treatment facility in western Massachusetts. This program has a 92% completion rate and excellent aftercare support. They have an opening in their next cohort starting Monday. Lauren stared at the information, realizing that help was actually possible, that change could begin immediately if she chose it. Monday is in 3 days, which means you have 3 days to make arrangements and prepare mentally for the hardest work you've ever done, Sarah said. But you don't have to do it alone. For the first time in the entire afternoon, Lauren looked directly at me, without anger or defensiveness. Zachary, can you forgive me for trying to steal your inheritance and destroy your relationship with Mom and Dad? The question deserved an honest answer. I can forgive you for being sick and making desperate choices, I said carefully. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or pretending the damage didn't happen. It means being willing to build something new if you're willing to do the work to become someone trustworthy. That's fair, Lauren said. More than fair. Dad's breathing had returned to normal, his color good, the medical crisis passed. But the emotional crisis was far from over. We all sat quietly for a moment, processing the weight of everything that had been revealed and everything that needed to change. I love this family, Dad said finally, but we're going to have to learn how to love each other better. That starts with honesty, continues with respect, and requires that we all take responsibility for our own choices instead of trying to control each other's. Lauren nodded slowly. I want to learn how to do that. I want to learn how to be part of a family instead of trying to run it. Andrew started fussing again, tired from the long day and overstimulation. Sarah lifted him from his stroller, and he immediately calmed down in her arms, reminding all of us that love doesn't have to be complicated. Sometimes it's just showing up consistently and providing comfort when someone needs it. So, what happens next? Mom asked quietly. Next, Sarah said, we help Lauren get into treatment. We get William's heart condition properly managed. We figure out how to be grandparents to 3 beautiful children, and we all learn how to have the difficult conversations before they become family emergencies. It wasn't a fairy tale ending, but it was something better. A realistic beginning built on truth instead of manipulation, hope instead of fear, and love that was strong enough to demand accountability, along with acceptance. 3 months later, I sat in Dr. Rebecca Chen's family therapy office, watching Lauren complete her 3rd session since returning from residential treatment. The woman sitting across from me bore little resemblance to the desperate, manipulative person who had tried to destroy our family's relationships over money and control. How are you feeling about the family business discussion? Dr. Chen asked Lauren directly. Nervous, but honest, Lauren replied, her voice steady in a way I hadn't heard in years. Zachary deserves his equal inheritance, and I deserve to earn back trust through actions, not manipulation. The residential treatment program had been everything Sarah researched: intensive, comprehensive, and brutally effective. Lauren completed the full 90-day program, learning not just how to stop gambling, but how to address the underlying depression and anxiety that had fueled her addictive behaviors. I've been attending Gamblers Anonymous meetings 3 times a week, Lauren continued. My sponsor helped me understand that trying to control family dynamics was another form of gambling, betting that manipulation would give me better outcomes than honesty. Dad, whose heart condition had stabilized beautifully under Sarah's continued care, nodded approvingly. The business sale completed last month. Both inheritances are now in managed trusts that provide steady income but prevent large lump sum access. Sarah had designed the trust structure to protect both Lauren's recovery and the family's long-term financial health. Lauren's portion provided monthly payments sufficient for independent living, but couldn't be accessed for gambling or other high-risk investments. My portion allowed more flexibility, but included automatic charitable donations to gambling addiction research and family therapy programs. How do you feel about the trust restrictions, Lauren? Dr. Chen asked. Grateful, Lauren answered immediately. Having access to $1 million right now would probably kill me. The monthly payments give me security without temptation. It's like having guardrails on a dangerous mountain road. They're there to protect me, not punish me. Mom smiled proudly. Lauren found a wonderful apartment near the treatment center. and she's been working part-time at their administrative office while continuing her recovery program. The job was perfect for Lauren's skills: bookkeeping and client coordination for people beginning their own recovery journeys. It paid enough to cover her basic expenses while keeping her connected to the support network that had literally saved her life. "Tell Dr. Chen about Christmas." Emma piped up from her corner where she was coloring with Jacob. Lauren's face lit up with genuine happiness. Zachary and Sarah hosted Christmas dinner for the whole family. "I gotta help cook and actually contribute something positive instead of just stirring up drama." The holiday had been a revelation for all of us. Lauren arrived early to help with preparation, bringing homemade cookies Shed learned to bake in treatment and thoughtful gifts Shed chosen carefully rather than purchasing in desperate last-minute panic. She played with the children, helped serve dinner, and left at a reasonable hour without creating any conflicts or trying to control conversations. The children seem very comfortable with Lauren now. "Doctor," Chen observed. "She reads us stories," Jacob said matter-of-factly, not looking up from his coloring. "Good stories about dragons that learn to be nice instead of scary." "That's very appropriate," Dr. Chen said with a small smile. Sarah bounced Andrew on her lap, our now 10-month-old son babbling happily at his grandmother. Lauren has been incredible with the kids. Patient, present, appropriate boundaries. Everything they need from an aunt. "It's easier to love them properly when I'm not constantly angry and scared about everything else in my life," Lauren explained. "Recovery taught me that hurt people, but healing people can help people heal." Uncle Frank had joined us for several sessions, working through his own financial deceptions and the family patterns that had enabled Lauren's manipulation. I paid back the church building fund and told Margaret everything about my business failures and drinking problem, Head shared during our last group session. "Turns out, honesty is less painful than I thought it would be." "How is William's health progressing, Doctor?" Chen asked. Dad flexed his fingers, his color robust and his energy much improved. "Sarah has been monitoring my condition closely, and my cardiologist in Springfield confirms that reducing family stress has improved my cardiac function significantly. Blood pressure is normal, stress tests are excellent, and I've lost 15 pounds through better diet and regular exercise." The business sale had allowed Mom and Dad to travel more, something they'd postponed for years due to company responsibilities. They'd visited Sarah's parents in Arizona, taken a cruise through the Caribbean, and planned a summer trip to see the grandchildren's cousins in Oregon. "And how is the relationship between Sarah and the extended family developing?" Dr. Chen asked. "They love her," Mom said immediately. "Aunt Margaret says she wishes all her daughters-in-law were cardiac surgeons who could monitor the family's health. Uncle Frank has started volunteering at the hospital where Sarah works, helping with patient transportation." Sarah laughed. "Frank has become incredibly popular with elderly patients. Turns out his construction background makes him excellent at explaining complex procedures in simple terms." "What about the creative projects, Zachary?" Dr. Chen asked. "Business is thriving," I said, pulling out my phone to show photos of our latest project. "We just completed the design for a new addiction recovery center in Springfield." Lauren actually provided input on making spaces feel welcoming instead of institutional. The recovery center project had become a family effort. Lauren's insights about what helped during treatment, Sarah's medical expertise about healing environments, and my design skills combined to create something truly special. The facility director said it was the most thoughtfully designed treatment space Shed ever seen. "I'm also teaching art therapy classes at Lauren's residential center, 2 evenings per week," I added. "Turns out, helping people express difficult emotions through creativity is incredibly rewarding." Emma looked up from her coloring. "Daddy, show Dr. Chen the picture I made for Aunt Lauren." She held up a drawing of stick figures holding hands around a heart. "That's our whole family," she explained proudly. "Even baby Andrew, see, has the tiny one in the middle. It's beautiful," Dr. Chen said sincerely. "Emma, how do you feel about having such a big family now?" "Happy," Emma said immediately. "Before, it was just me and Jacob and Sarah and baby Andrew and Daddy Zachary. But now we have Grandma Patricia and Grandpa William and Aunt Lauren and Uncle Frank and Aunt Margaret. It's like our family got bigger and better." Jacob nodded enthusiastically. "And everyone is nice to each other now instead of using angry voices." Dr. Chen turned to me. "Zachary, how do you feel about the changes in your family relationships?" I considered the question carefully. Cautiously optimistic. Lauren has done incredible work in recovery, and I see genuine changes in her behavior and attitudes. Dad and Mom are learning to communicate more directly, instead of avoiding difficult topics. Sarah feels welcomed and appreciated rather than investigated and judged. But, Dr. Chen prompted, sensing my hesitation. But recovery is ongoing work, not a finished achievement. Family relationships that took years to damage won't heal overnight. I'm committed to building something healthy, but I'm also realistic about the work still required. Lauren nodded appreciatively. That's exactly what I need to hear. I don't want false reassurance or premature forgiveness. I want to earn back trust through consistent actions over time. What does that look like practically? Dr. Chen asked. Monthly family therapy sessions for at least the next year, Sarah said. Continued addiction counseling for Lauren, cardiac monitoring for William, and regular family activities that help us practice healthy communication patterns. Plus, Lauren added, I'm working with my sponsor to make direct amends to everyone I hurt through my manipulation and lies. Not just apologizing, but taking concrete actions to repair damage and prevent future harm. Dr. Chen reviewed her notes. This family has made remarkable progress in a relatively short time. What do you attribute that success to? Crisis, Dad said immediately. Sometimes families don't change until the alternative becomes completely unacceptable. And professional help, Mom added. We needed outside perspective to see patterns we were blind to from inside. Boundaries, Sarah contributed. Learning that love requires both acceptance and accountability. Truth, Lauren said quietly. Finally being honest about our problems, instead of pretending everything was fine while we all suffered privately. And commitment, I concluded. Deciding that our relationships were worth the hard work required to make them healthy. Andrew started fussing, signaling the end of our session. As we gathered our things, Dr. Chen made her final observation. Families are complex systems that can get stuck in destructive patterns for years. But they can also change dramatically when members commit to honesty, accountability, and mutual support. You're proof that even seriously damaged relationships can heal when people are willing to do the necessary work. 3 more months later, we gathered for Lauren's 6-month recovery celebration at our house. The yard was full of children playing, adults talking comfortably, and the sound of genuine laughter that comes when people feel safe with each other. Lauren was telling a story about her new volunteer work with financial literacy classes for recovering gamblers, her face animated with purpose and hope. Dad was teaching Jacob how to use a level on the treehouse we were building together. Mom was helping Emma plant flowers in the garden, both of them covered in soil and giggling. Sarah found me on the back porch, watching our complicated, imperfect, beautiful family figure out how to love each other better. Any regrets about finally introducing me to them? She asked, settling beside me with baby Andrew. Only that, we waited so long, I said honestly. All those years of protecting our happiness when we could have been building something bigger, it wasn't the right time until it was, Sarah said practically. They needed to be ready to hear truth, and you needed to be strong enough to speak it regardless of their response. Emma ran over, flower petals stuck in her hair. Daddy, Grandma Patricia says we can plant a whole vegetable garden next year. Can we grow carrots? I want to grow carrots. We can grow whatever you want, sweetheart, I promised, lifting her onto my lap. Even pumpkins for Halloween. Especially pumpkins for Halloween. She wiggled down and ran back to the garden, full of plans and excitement about growing things from tiny seeds into something wonderful. That's what we're all doing, Sarah said quietly, following my gaze toward our daughter. Planting seeds and trusting they'll grow into something beautiful with enough care, patience, and time. Lauren approached us, carrying 2 glasses of iced tea. I wanted to thank you both again for not giving up on me, when giving up would have been completely justified. Families don't give up, I said, accepting the tea gratefully. They just sometimes need to learn better ways to hold on. I have something for you, Lauren said, pulling a small wrapped package from her pocket. 6-month recovery tradition is to give meaningful gifts to people who supported your healing journey. Inside was a simple wooden frame containing Emma's family drawing, but Lauren had added calligraphy around the border. Family, where love learns to grow stronger through truth, forgiveness, and the courage to begin again. Lauren, this is beautiful, Sarah said, her eyes misting slightly. Dr. Chen helped me understand that recovery isn't just about stopping destructive behavior. It's about learning to contribute positively to other people's lives. You've given me a chance to practice being the kind of family member I want to be. Uncle Frank called from across the yard, announcing that the barbecue was ready. As we headed toward the picnic tables Dad had built specifically for family gatherings, I realized this was what I'd always wanted, but never thought possible. A family that could face its problems honestly, support each other through difficulties, and celebrate both individual successes and collective healing. One more thing, Lauren said as we reached the others. I've been working with my sponsor on a project to help other families dealing with addiction and financial manipulation. We want to create educational resources and support groups. Would you and Sarah consider being part of the advisory board? The request was perfect. It gave Lauren a way to channel her experience into helping others while keeping her connected to the accountability and support that maintained her recovery. It also acknowledged that our family's healing journey could benefit other families facing similar challenges. "We'd be honored," Sarah said immediately. As we gathered around the picnic table, Dad asked Uncle Frank to say grace. Instead of the formal prayers we'd grown up with, Frank spoke simply about gratitude for second chances, wisdom gained through difficulties, and the blessing of love that's strong enough to demand growth alongside acceptance. "And thank you," he concluded, "for reminding us that families are not perfect, but they can always become better when people are willing to do the work together." Amen. We all said together, including Emma and Jacob, who had learned that some words carry special meaning when spoken with people you love. The conversation over dinner was easy, natural, full of plans for future gatherings and genuine interest in each other's lives. Lauren shared updates about her job and volunteer work. Dad talked about his improved health and retirement projects. Mom showed everyone photos from their recent travels. Sarah discussed her latest medical cases and research projects. But mostly, we just enjoyed being together without the undercurrent of manipulation, secrets, or walking on eggshells that had characterized family gatherings for so many years. As evening approached and guests began departing, I found myself reflecting on the journey from that shocking birthday lunch to this peaceful family dinner. The road had been painful, complex, and required more courage than I thought I possessed. But the destination, a family built on truth, respect, and mutual support, was worth every difficult step. "What are you thinking about?" Sarah asked, joining me as I cleaned up the backyard. "How much courage it takes to love people honestly instead of just safely," I said, stacking chairs on the patio. "And how much more satisfying honest love turns out to be." Emma and Jacob were inside with Grandma Patricia, getting ready for baths and bedtime stories. Andrew was already asleep in his crib, exhausted from a day full of attention and stimulation. Lauren was helping Dad secure the barbecue grill, the two of them working together with an ease that would have been impossible just months earlier. "Do you think we'll be okay?" I asked Sarah. Not perfect, but genuinely okay as a family. She considered the question while watching Lauren and Dad collaborate on putting away lawn furniture. "I think we've learned the most important thing: how to have difficult conversations before they become family emergencies. As long as we keep doing that, we can work through whatever comes next." That night, after the children were settled and the house was quiet, Sarah and I sat on our front porch swing, watching the stars appear over our neighborhood. It had been an ordinary evening in many ways. Family dinner, children's laughter, the comfortable rhythms of people who care about each other. But it had also been extraordinary, because 6 months earlier none of it would have been possible. We'd built this happiness from the wreckage of broken trust, addiction, manipulation, and years of misunderstanding. Not through magic or miracles, but through the slower, more reliable alchemy of honesty, accountability, professional help, and the stubborn insistence that love could be both unconditional and demanding of growth. "I love you," I told Sarah, reaching for her hand in the darkness. "I love you too," she replied. "All of you. This whole complicated, healing, imperfect, beautiful family." In the distance, we could hear the sound of children playing in other yards, families finishing their own evening routines, the gentle bustle of a neighborhood settling into night. Our story was just one among thousands, but it was ours, and we'd fought for it, and that made all the difference. Sometimes the greatest victories aren't dramatic or immediately visible. Sometimes they look like a recovering addict maintaining sobriety one day at a time, or an elderly man learning to express emotions instead of hiding them, or a young father choosing vulnerability over self-protection. Sometimes they look like a family gathered around a dinner table, talking honestly about their lives and listening with genuine care to each other's answers. As we headed inside to check on our sleeping children and prepare for another day of building our life together, I realized that happiness isn't something you find or achieve. It's something you create through the daily choice to love people well, tell the truth even when it's difficult, and believe that broken things can heal when tended with patience and skill. 6 months ago, my sister had announced to a restaurant full of strangers that I would die alone and unloved. Tonight, I was surrounded by more love than I ever thought possible. Not despite our family's problems, but because we'd learned to face them together, with courage, honesty, and hope. That transformation didn't happen overnight, and it wouldn't be maintained without ongoing effort. But it was real. It was ours. And it proved that even the most damaged relationships can heal when people are willing to do the necessary work. In the end, that might be the most important lesson of all. Love isn't just a feeling, or even just a choice. It's a skill that can be learned, practiced, and improved over time. And when families commit to developing that skill together, remarkable healing becomes not just possible, but inevitable. What's your experience been with family challenges that required difficult conversations to resolve? Have you found that honesty, even when painful initially, ultimately leads to stronger relationships than avoiding conflict? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like, subscribe for more content about family relationships and personal growth, and share it with someone who might benefit from hearing about second chances and healing. Remember that every family faces challenges, but with the right support and commitment to growth, those challenges can become opportunities for deeper connection and understanding. Thank you for taking this journey with Zachary and his family. May your own relationships be blessed with the courage for truth, the strength for accountability, and the hope that love can always learn to grow stronger.